Vinicius Jr. has reportedly given Real Madrid one clear condition if they want him to stay: pay him more than Kylian Mbappé. That demand has thrown his contract talks into chaos and forced the club to make a huge decision. Let me break it down. Let's get straight to it. According to reporting from AS, Vinicius Jr. wants to be paid 20 million euros a year, a 33% rise from the salary he and Mbappé are currently on, which sat around 15 million euros. That was the opening shot in this saga, but it didn't stop there. As talks dragged into the following year, the ask kept climbing. By the time negotiations reopened after the World Cup, sources were telling Yahoo Sports that one of Vinicius's primary objectives in the negotiations was to become the club's highest paid player, or at least earn a package comparable to Mbappé's, with the Frenchman currently receiving the equivalent of around 30 million euros per year once you combine his salary with his signing bonus. That's not a typo. Vinicius wasn't just asking to match Mbappé anymore. He wanted to beat him. Real Madrid's response tells you how seriously they're taking it. Per that same report, Real Madrid's previous proposal to Vinicius stood at 23 million euros net annually, while the anticipated post-World Cup offer would increase that figure to 25 million euros. So Madrid moved a lot, but even that wasn't enough to close the gap, because Vinicius's camp had built a second demand into the deal, one that has nothing to do with base salary at all. This is where the story gets specific. Reporting out of Spain says Vinicius Jr.'s Real Madrid contract extension hit a standstill over 125 million euros renewal bonus, with the Brazilian wanting to match Kylian Mbappé's package while Madrid refuses. A renewal bonus, not a signing bonus for a new player walking through the door. A bonus for a player who's already there, already under contract, asking to be paid like he's arriving as a free agent. Here's how that number got attached to Vinicius in the first place. The player's entourage's demands go beyond salary. Vinicius intends to include a significant renewal bonus in his new contract, similar to the operation that brought Mbappé to the club, with the forward's entourage demanding a sum close to 125 million euros. A figure that would serve as a reference to the bonus Mbappé received when joining the club as a free agent. Madrid's answer to that has been consistent and blunt. The Valdebebas offices appear to have completely ruled out that possibility, considering the two situations very different. Mbappé arrived without a transfer fee after his PSG contract expired, whereas Vinicius is already part of the squad on a valid contract, which is why the club believes a renewal bonus isn't applicable. So now you've got two separate fights layered on top of each other. Fight 1, does Vinicius earn more base salary than Mbappé? Fight 2, does Vinicius get a 9-figure bonus just for staying somewhere he's already contracted to be? Both fights trace back to the same source: the deal Madrid gave Mbappé when he arrived, and the fact that Vinicius watched that deal get signed while he was still the guy who just delivered Champions Leagues. The most recent reporting from just this week confirms the gap is still there. Vinicius' camp wants his salary to approach that of Kylian Mbappé, who is reportedly earning around 30 million euros per season. And according to the report, those demands remain well above what Real Madrid is currently willing to offer. And Madrid's position hasn't softened. Club president Florentino Perez is equally determined to protect the team's wage structure. And according to Sport, Real Madrid considers the current financial demands excessive, having maintained a firm position throughout negotiations. Now there is a twist that's just broken in the last 24 hours, and it changes the shape of this whole standoff. Reports out of ESPN say Madrid have found a way to bridge the gap without technically breaking their own rules. The bonus-heavy architecture of this contract is not incidental, it is the point. ESPN note that structuring the deal this way allows Madrid to get closer to the salary Vinicius had been seeking, without distorting the club's wage hierarchy. And they explicitly draw the comparison to how Mbappé was signed last summer. A repeatable model, not a one-off capitulation. In plain terms, instead of just handing Vinicius a flat 30 million euros to match Mbappé outright, Madrid have built a base plus bonus structure. By loading the upside into bonuses tied to performances and awards, Madrid get to say the base rate is 20 million euros. Vinicius gets to say his earning potential matches his ambition. Both sides get to walk away saying they won. That's the number at the center of this. Now let's rewind and figure out how Vinicius got the leverage to ask for it in the first place. To understand why a winger felt entitled to outturn the most expensive attacker Real Madrid has ever signed, you have to go back to what Vinicius actually did for this club, and to the moment Mbappé's arrival changed everything about how Vinicius saw his own worth. He didn't arrive as a superstar. Years back, before any of this contract drama, reporting described him as currently earning 3.5 million euros a year, a far lower amount than his performances this season warrant. Back when Madrid first opened talks to double his salary. Even then, Madrid was already trying to get ahead of outside interest, hoping to reward his excellent form and tie the player down longer. While Vinicius quietly let it be known that he had informed Florentino Perez of offers from the other powerhouses in Europe, with PSG one of the teams to table an offer. That's the pattern. It started early and it's never really stopped. The escalation happened fast after that. He kept scoring, kept winning trophies, and by the numbers, most recently on record, he's racked up 370 competitive appearances for Los Blancos, scoring 124 goals, and has already won 2 Champions Leagues and 3 La Liga titles. He was named to the FIFPro World 11 in 2023 and 2024, and was named the best FIFA men's player in 2024. That's not a squad player asking for a raise. That's a guy who believes he's been the best player at the club, on the planet, even in the years since Mbappé put pen to paper. And that's exactly the problem. Because when Mbappé signed, he didn't sign for what Vinicius was making. He signed for something else entirely. When Madrid first tried to lure the Frenchman years earlier, before he ever put on the shirt, they were already offering him 70 million euros per year, in addition to a transfer bonus of 125 million euros, to move to the Spanish capital, with Madrid ready to offer him 35 million euros annually, which would still make him the highest paid athlete in the club if he'd said yes back then. He didn't, not that time. But when he finally did arrive as a free agent, the shape of that deal followed him. Vinicius watched a teammate walk in and instantly become the reference point for every future negotiation at the club, funded not by transfer fees but by the savings of a free transfer. That's the exact resentment fueling this whole saga. As one breakdown of the situation put it, when Mbappé arrived in the summer of 2024 as the highest paid player in the squad by a significant margin, Vinicius, who had just delivered a Champions League title and a Ballon d'Or campaign, was left earning considerably less than the new arrival. And from that point on, his ask has been simple. His demand was unambiguous. He wanted a salary equal to Mbappé's. Madrid didn't just say no because of the money. They said no because of what saying yes would trigger. Real Madrid refused to grant this outright, concerned about the domino effect on their broader wage structure. Bellingham, Camavinga, and others would inevitably follow with similar demands. That's the real fear inside the club. It's not really about whether Vinicius deserves the money. It's about what happens the moment one player breaks the ceiling and every other locker sees it. There was a solution floated at one point that tried to split the difference, an escalator clause instead of a flat jump, giving Vinicius a path to parity without Madrid having to make one dramatic public concession. Rather than a one-off adjustment, it gives Vinicius a contractual trajectory, one that delivers parity progressively without forcing the club to make a single dramatic concession. That kind of engineering shows you just how delicate this has been. Nobody at Madrid wants to be the one who signs off on the number that blows up the pay scale. But here's the thing that makes Vinicius's position stronger than it's ever been. He has somewhere else to go, and everyone knows it. Every negotiation needs leverage. And Vinicius has had the biggest leverage card in world football sitting in his back pocket for over a year: Saudi Arabia. It started as speculation and turned into hard numbers fast. Early reporting had him the subject of interest from the Saudi Pro League, who are said to be willing to offer him 1 billion euros. That's not a transfer fee. That's a total package figure, and it dwarfs anything Real Madrid has ever put on a contract. As the story developed, the specifics got even more staggering. One outlet reported the Saudis were prepared to pay a $300 million transfer fee to sign Vinicius Jr. from Real Madrid, on top of a staggering $200 million per season on a 5-year deal. Now, Vinicius has never treated that offer as something he's chasing. Every report on the subject frames it the same way, as a card he holds, not a door he's trying to walk through. Despite the number attached, the 24-year-old has insisted he wants to stay at Madrid, and if they satisfy his salary demands, the Brazilian is likely to sign a new deal. But insisting you want to stay and having €1 billion sitting on the table are two things that exist at the same time. And Madrid knows it. That's precisely what forced Madrid's hand in the first place. Vinicius had actually turned down an earlier approach from the club, betting that his stock would keep rising if he kept performing. Vinicius turned down an earlier extension approach from Madrid, believing he could secure a more lucrative contract if he continued to impress on the pitch. However, Real Madrid initiated discussions with the Brazilian's representatives after learning about his meeting with Saudi officials regarding a potential move to the Middle East. That's the moment the club stopped treating this as routine business and started treating it as urgent. And once Madrid was negotiating from a position of fear rather than comfort, Vinicius's camp pushed harder. Sources told Cadena Ser that his team was pushing for a significant salary increase, ensuring he earns above the €25 million mark annually, and that Real Madrid would need to match or at least come close to the offer Vinicius received from Saudi Arabia. There was even a stretch where Madrid's reluctance to move made a Saudi exit look like the more realistic outcome. At present, Real Madrid has shown little interest in agreeing to these terms, making the possibility of a move to Saudi Arabia more realistic, one report noted at the time. It wasn't just talk either. At one stage, Vinicius reportedly went further than taking a meeting. He actually turned the club's own outreach away. As Relevo reported it, Los Blancos wanted to offer the Brazilian superstar a new deal despite his current contract running until the end of the 2026-27 season. Reportedly to make Vinicius feel he remained a key player despite Mbappé's arrival. But after receiving a contract worth €1 billion from the Saudi Pro League that prompted Madrid to reach out in the first place, the attacker thanked the club for their interest but refused to enter negotiations, wanting to wait for the right moment. That's a player who understood exactly how much power he had, and chose the timing on his own terms. But the tide has since turned back in Madrid's favor, and it happened for a reason nobody saw coming. The Saudi threat evaporated. By the middle of this year, the leverage card that had defined the entire saga had quietly disappeared. As ESPN's reporting on the near-final deal put it, the absence of a live Saudi offer removes one source of external pressure on Madrid, but also removes Vinicius' clearest negotiating card. With that offer gone, Vinicius was left with only one piece of leverage remaining: the calendar itself and the fact that his contract keeps ticking closer to expiry. This is where the story turns into a countdown. Vinicius's deal runs out in the middle of 2027, and that date has been hanging over every single round of these talks. The expiry of his current deal, set for June 30, 2027, is swiftly approaching, and negotiations over a new deal have hit a standstill. The mechanics of that deadline matter more than people realize. Once a contract gets inside its final 6 months, a player is legally free to talk to foreign clubs about a pre-contract move. No fee required, no permission needed. That's the chapter Madrid is racing to close. What remains is the contract expiry in June 2027, and the ability to open talks with foreign clubs from January of that year. Structural leverage that loses potency the closer a deal gets to being signed. In other words, every month this drags on, Vinicius edges closer to a date where he could simply walk for free, and Madrid would get nothing for one of the best players in the world. Florentino Perez has been asked about this directly, and his answer has been consistent in public, even while his negotiators have held a hard line in private. Asked about Vinicius's future in an interview months ago, Perez didn't hedge. "I'd love for him to stay forever," he said. "He's won us the last 2 Champions Leagues, and he identifies really well with the club." Pretty words, but behind them, the numbers were still stuck. That contradiction, public affection, private stalemate, has defined almost every month of this saga. At one point, talks got so stuck that Spanish outlets described the situation as effectively parked. Discussions over a new contract for Vinicius Jr. at Real Madrid were described as on hold and up in the air by Spanish media, although conversations were expected to reopen the following year. And Vinicius's own public comments occasionally made things worse rather than better. At one point he revealed he'd hoped renewal talks would have already started, which forced his own agent to formally lay out his numbers to the club, months before Madrid was ready to negotiate seriously. Not everyone close to the club thought Vinicius's demands were smart timing. Athletic Bilbao's sporting director, a former Madrid player himself, warned publicly that pushing this hard could blow back on him. Speaking to Cadena Ser, he said plainly that trying to put pressure on Florentino Perez could backfire, pointing to what happened with Sergio Ramos. As a cautionary example, since Ramos was moved to the left wing, he never looked the same, and playing alongside Mbappé has been difficult in a similar way. It's an outsider's read, but it captures something real. This negotiation was never just about a salary line. It's about proving publicly that you're still the most important player in the building. The numbers involved in the standoff kept shifting depending on which report you read, but the shape stayed the same: Vinicius wanting a figure north of €20 million with bonuses attached, and Madrid holding a hard line just under it. At one stage, the two camps were reportedly separated by a gap as small as a €10 million disagreement with Vinicius's agents, Fred Pina and Thacilo Soares, telling people close to the situation that Madrid's so-called final offer was, in their words, not enough to justify signing. The increase is too small to warrant a contract extension for Vinicius Jr., who has helped the team win 14 trophies, including 2 Champions League titles. That's the crux of the whole standoff, not whether Vinicius is good enough. Not whether Madrid wants him, it's a fight over a number, dragged out over more than a year, with a Saudi fortune in the background, and a free agency clock ticking louder every month. So where does all of this leave Vinicius, Mbappé, and the club that has to pay both of them? The latest reporting suggests the standoff is finally cracking, and the structure Madrid landed on is built exactly to let both sides claim the outcome they wanted. According to ESPN's Alex Kirkland and Rodrigo Fies, the two camps are now near an agreement that would run to 2030, with a guaranteed €20 million per season after tax, and a ceiling of €30 million once performance bonuses are factored in. That ceiling matters. It's the number that lets Vinicius say he got what he came for. It's not the flat €30 million he originally wanted, attached to a renewal bonus north of €100 million. It's something engineered carefully to look like victory for everyone in the room. Sport reported the new deal until 2030 would pay Vinicius more than €20 million in net salary each season, and it isn't as much as the €30 million he requested, but it does break the €15 million limit Real Madrid usually imposes. And crucially, once bonuses are stacked on top, Vinicius is now set to be paid as much as Mbappé, the highest paid player on the roster. The people around Vinicius shape the length of this deal too, and that detail says something about how he sees his own career from here. Rather than tying himself to Madrid for the rest of the decade in one long stretch, his side pushed for something shorter. Vinicius's agent, Federico Pina, prefers shorter contracts that give the player more control over his career, which is why, instead of a much longer extension, the deal adds just 3 more years to his existing one, keeping him at the club until 2030. He's not signing away his 20s and 30s in one motion. He's buying himself another negotiation a few years down the road, once this contract's numbers look outdated again. There's also a wrinkle that Madrid itself is watching nervously. Breaking their own wage ceiling for one player, even under a bonus structure, sets a precedent the rest of the squad will notice. Reports at the time flagged that risk directly, warning that ignoring the club's self-imposed salary cap on this occasion will mean Vinny Jr. stays. But there is now a risk that other players see the situation as a way to secure their own payday, with Jude Bellingham given as the example. Every raise handed out at this level creates the next negotiation somewhere else in the locker room. That's not something that ends when Vinicius signs his name. If anything, it just moves the argument down the hallway to the next star waiting his turn. And through all of it, the loyalty angle has genuinely held up. Despite a fortune large enough to set a player up for multiple lifetimes, Vinicius never seriously entertained walking away. Vinicius has also shown remarkable loyalty. While clubs in Saudi Arabia were ready to throw a staggering €1 billion at him over 5 years, he did not even consider leaving, and Real Madrid never once thought of letting him go. The money he's chasing was never really about escaping the Bernabeu. It was about making sure that, if he stayed as the best paid man in the building. The same status Mbappé walked in and got handed on day one. That's the story here, a player who watched a superstar arrive and instantly outturn him, who used a $1 billion Saudi number as cover, who forced Florentino Perez's hand on a wage structure the club had protected for years, and who is now, after more than a year of stalled meetings and leaked figures, on the verge of getting exactly what he set out to get. Whether that number ends up higher than Mbappé's on paper, or just close enough to call it even, the message Vinicius sent from the start of this saga has landed. He wanted to be paid like the most important player at Real Madrid. It looks like he's about to be. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar